Shri Guru Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nivasesa Shunyavadi Paschachadi Shatarane. Bolo. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesa Shunyavadi Paschachadi Shata. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha. Bolo. Vancha Kripa Sindubhya eva cha. Sindubhya eva cha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Patitanam Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Shri Krishna Bhajana Lagi Sangsare Ainu. Shri Krishna Lagi Sangsare Ainu. Shri Krishna Bhajana Lagi Sangsare Ainu. Maya Jale Bandi Hoya Vriksha Samana Hoenu. Snehalata Bedi Bedi Tanu Hoila Sesha. Tanu Koila Sesha Kridarupe Naritahe Hridoye Praveshe. Hridarupe Naritahe Hridoye Praveshe. Falarupe putra kanya dale bangi pare Falarupe putra kanya dale bangi pare Kala rupi bihanga upare basa kore Kala rupi bihanga upare Vaditena paila gacha Sukaiya gela Sansare Radhavanala Tahate lagila Sansare Radhavanala Tahate lagia Durasana due Ute dumaiya Durasana Ute dumaiya Fukara koroye lochan Marilama puriya Fukara koroye lochan Marilama Egao mora Vaishnava Gosai Egao mora Egao mora Vaishnava Gosai Karunara Jala Sincha Bolo Karunara Jala Sincha Karunara Jala Sincha Karunara Jala Sincha Pai Tabe Raksha Pai Tabe Raksha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone all together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jai Vaishnav Thakur, Jai Vaishnav Thakur, Ami Tomara Kukura, Vaishnav Thakur, Ami Tomara Kukur, Thakur, Ami Tomara Kukur, Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo. Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Jai Gaur Giriraj, Radha Gopinath Ju, Premanandi Hari Hari Bo, Srila Prabhupada Ke, Shri Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki, Shri Prem Data Nityananda Prabhu Ke, Shri Prem Purushottam Sachinandana Gaura Hari Ke, Bolo Giriraj Maharaj Ki, Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund Giri Govardhana Ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki, Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki, Shri Purushottam Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Shri Madhuja Rasa Ganaiti Murti Mahabha Prakash Jagannath Swami Ki, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki, Shri Panchatattva Ke Go Premanandi Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Goragra Ganya Gana Gotra Goloruharam Goranga Guratama Gopyara Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami. Gurave Gurachandraya Radhikaya Tudalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tudbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Jachiya Dileka Kola Kahe Premananda He Mona Gauranga Vridoya Dariya Bola Bhaja Gauranga Kaha Gauranga Taha Gaurangera Namare Bolo Bhaja Gauranga Kaha Gauranga Laha Gaurangera Namare Jai Jana Gauranga Bhaje Se Hoy Amara Pranare Jai Jana Gauranga Bhaje Se Hoy Amara Pranare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya Prema Bidana Parama Pumarta Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Madgavirapi Gopala Sri Kuryat Kripaya Jari Tadaiva Sambhaya Pitva Rishayustat Priya Janaha. Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunathapta Brajabala Bapahimam Vanchakopatarubhischa Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'd like to thank everyone very much for inviting me to come here. And I'm not used to not having a translator. We've been in Ukraine for the last few weeks and Lithuania before that. So it's another thing for me. We'd like to speak something the next few days, what I titled, which was written slightly wrong on the list, From Avishta to Avesha. That sounds really very technical. But it's actually something very, very practical and very, very important for all of us. We'd like to speak something about how devotees become empowered and the importance of empowerment for our movement, the absolute importance, and how that goes from Avishta. Avishta means when someone becomes absorbed in something, all the way to Avesha. We know the word Avesha as in Shakti Avesha. When someone becomes endowed with great potency. And we'd like to speak about this today in kind of a general introductory way, and tomorrow from the perspective of Guru Seva, and how the disciple who's very sincere, how he practically becomes one with Guru. And then on the third day, Brahmanda Tarite Shakti Dade Jani Jani Eveda Purani Guna Gaye Jebashuni. We'd like to discuss something very esoteric, how it is that every devotee, every one of you here in the room, can deliver not just Stockholm, or not just Sweden, or not just Europe, not just this planet, but can deliver the whole universe, according to all the Vedic literatures. How can we understand that? Are we just flattering everybody, or is that actually a fact? A very interesting thing. So, in the beginning we sang this song, which I'll explain in a moment. At the end of the song, we were singing Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Ami Tomara Kukur. How many of you understand what Ami Tomara Kukur means? Raise your hand, please. You understand, Prabhuji? You don't understand. Okay? So practically a few of you. Okay, thank you. So Ami means I. In this case it means yours. I am yours. Ami Tomar means yours. Ami, I am yours, literally. Kukur means dog. We want to become the dog of the Vaishnavas. And looking out here and seeing this assembly of Vaishnavas here today, and just coming here and seeing all the exalted personalities here, like Subhag Maharaj. Do you know Subhag Maharaj is 77 years old? He's very good friends with my Guru Maharaj. He was, Srila Prabhupada treated him like a friend. And that's a long story. He was close with Srila Prabhupada's very dear godbrother, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. And then we have so many wonderful exalted Vaishnavas who have come here. I feel very, very insignificant. And it reminds me of a nice verse which was compiled by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur at the end of his commentary on the 87th chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he says there, Hey Bhakta Dvaryayam Chanchad Valadi Rotivo Manak Prasadam Labatam Yasmad Vishishta Sveva Natati. This very nicely describes my situation today. Hey Bhakta, oh dear devotees, Dvaryayam, I'm standing at your door. And what am I doing at your door? Chanchad, Valadi. Valadi means a tail. I'm standing at your door and I'm wagging my tail. And I'm barking. This is what we call class, by the way, here. So, dear devotees, I'm standing at your door, I'm wagging my tail, and I'm barking, and I have some hope. Prasadam labatam yasma, that maybe you'll throw me a little bit of prasadam, a little bit of food. I'm not so much worried about you feeding me. But the word prasadam is synonymous for another word in Sanskrit which you must know, which is kripa, or mercy. So please give me some mercy. And in particular, what? Vishishta sveva. Sveva refers to a dog, this dog. Vishishta sveva natati. That you please bless me that I can get a very good master. And who is the best master? Is Krishna. That we can get Krishna as our master. And please overlook the faults that I may do when I'm barking and wagging my tail in this program. So we sang a very nice song from the poet Lochan Das Thakur, who's a famous author of Sri Chaitanya Mangal. And Lochan Das Thakur, he speaks about the tree of my life. So in this program, we're also speaking about the tree of Gaura Leela. And the subject matter that I chose is very intimately related with the tree of Gaura Leela. Now, there's different types of trees, and we'll discuss something about that also today. So he's saying here in this song that Sri Krishna Bhajana Lagi. I came here to this world to do bhajan. Sangsare Ayinu. It's my purpose in coming to this world of birth and death. But a problem happened. Maya Jali Bandi Hoya Briksha Samana Hoinu. Maya caught me up in her net. And now I become dull and stupid like a tree. We've been hearing from the Adi Leela chapter 9 every day of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which speaks about the Bhakti Kopa Briksha, or the wish-fulfilling tree of devotion. And how the different associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are like branches and parts of that tree. But it's a stark contrast because there's another kind of tree that we're hearing about in this song from Lochan Das Thakur, and this is the tree of my life. I came here to do bhajan, but then Maya caught me up in her net, and I become dull like a tree. And then you may see when a tree is growing, many times a creeper starts growing around the tree. Sneha Lata. This Lata, this creeper, is a creeper of affection. Sneha Lata, Bedi, Bedi. It's coiling all around me. Tanu koile seishe. Kida rupe nari tahi hridoye prabeshe. The vine of material love. It starts coiling around the tree of my life. And then, in the form of a particular type of akida, or insect. Kida rupe nadi, in the form of a woman. A woman, just like insects, they eat their way into the tree. So in the tree of my life, a woman, like an insect, is eating her way into my heart. And then this tree of my life, it's growing. Phalo rupe putra kanya dhale bhangi pade. And on the branches of the tree of my life, different fruits come. And these fruits are the sons and daughters that I have in this lifetime. And they manifest themselves on the branches of my tree, and I'm very attached to them. But then on their own, they fall away from my branches. And they go to the ground, they leave me. And then he says that Kala Rupe, in the form Bihange, a bird in the form of a time in the form of a bird, Upade Bhasa Kode, makes its nest in my tree, the tree of my life. Bharitena Paila Gacha, Sukai Agela, Sang Sarira Dhava Nala Tahite Lagila. Because I never watered the tree of my life, I just tried to focus on the fruits of the tree of my life in the form of my children. I focused on the insect that was boring into my heart in the form of my husband or my wife. And I didn't think about maybe I should water the tree. So because I didn't water that tree, the tree became stunted. And the tree gradually dried up. And what happens, any forester knows, if you have a forest and you don't put water on the trees for several years, what happens? In California, it's going on right now. They have huge forest fires. So, Sangsara Davanala Tahite Lagila, the blazing forest fire of birth and death, caught hold of my tree. But Lochandas says a nice thing then. He says, Durasa Durvasana Dui Ute Dumaiya. That there was Dumaiya, there was two columns of smoke coming from the tree of my life, which is on fire. One was my wicked hopes Now I'm seeing them going up in smoke. The hopes that I have in this life. When we were very young, when I would first join this one, I thought, definitely I'm going to learn Sanskrit. Maybe I'll memorize the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. I was thinking it just seemed possible. Anything seemed possible when you're very young. Now I'm happy if I can just give the class without falling asleep. And maybe remember one or two verses as the body gets older. And we feel very discouraged because we had so many hopes. We had all these hopes and wicked desires. These are the two streams of smoke coming from the tree of my life. But Lochan Das Thakur, he shows us that we should have some intelligence. And he sings, you can chant Hare Krishna in response. Egao mo Vaishnava Gosai Karunara Jala Sinchita Viraksha Pai Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Egao more. Oh please Egao more Vaishnava Gosai. My dear devotees, please help me. This is real intelligence. The tree of my life is on fire. And what do you pray when the tree of your life is on fire? Sansara Dava Nalalita Loka Trunaya Karunya Danadanadvam Samsara Dava Nalalita Loka Trunaya Karunya Danadanadvam Praptasya Kalyana Gunana Vashya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Praptasya Kalyana Gunana Vashya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda. If there's a huge forest fire, you can go with a bucket of water, but it's not going to put it out. But if a great rain cloud comes, that fire will be put out. So the tree of our life is burning. And I don't just need an eyedropper of water going over to put this fire out, but I need a great monsoon cloud, Ganaganatvam, of mercy, which comes from Sri Gurudev, from the Vaishnavas. So those Vaishnavas are like trees. Trees are very amazing creatures. It's one of my favorite subjects. We won't go so much in that direction. But I lived for some time in my teenage years in high school in California, Northern California. And in California, they're famous, the redwoods there. And these redwoods, these are the tallest trees in the world. They can reach a height of more than 350 feet. That's 107 meters. One tree. The tallest tree in the world is in Northern California. It's called the Hyperion. It's in the Redwood National Forest there. And it's 115, almost 116 meters high. Huge, huge tree. And redwood trees, they can have a diameter of 7 meters. 7 meters around. Huge, huge trees. And they can weigh up to 1.6 million pounds. One tree. Very, very huge trees. That's about 726,000 kgs. One tree. But at the same time, a redwood seed is only 3 millimeters long. It's very, very tiny. And each tree has millions of cones, and each cone has, I don't know, hundreds or maybe thousands of seeds within it. in just 1 year, a tree may give thousands of cones, and what to speak of in the course of its lifetime. So, Srila Prabhupada, he described his mission as planting a seed. And that's the mission of our acharyas. Prabhupada's planted a seed in all the devotees' hearts. And just as a seed sometimes, or always, it stays under the soil for some time, maybe for many months, if you have a suitable cool seed or something, and it doesn't sprout. And then one day after a long time, suddenly it begins to sprout up, if you've given that seed proper water. So we're reading in this chapter, Chaitanya Charitamrita, about the glories of the trees of Bhakti, and how they're giving fruits of Krishna Prem, and how the different trees of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, this tree of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, has different branches represented by different devotees. And Prabhupada writes in one purport, he says that our ISKCON society is one branch. It's not the only branch. It's a significant point. Devotees should understand that. We shouldn't be sectarian either. This branch of ISKCON is one branch of the Chaitanya tree. It's not the entire tree itself. And we want that these seeds that Srila Prabhupada has planted and that Prabhupada's disciples have planted in our hearts, that they should grow into great, wonderful devotional trees, and that they should give fruits. So what is the process of that? Reading in this 9th chapter of the Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a verse quoted from the 22nd chapter of the 10th canto. It's a very interesting chapter. That chapter, the end of that chapter precedes the pastime of the Yajna Brahmins, the wives of the Yajna Brahmins, Yajna Patnis. And it takes place after Krishna's taken the clothes of the gopis. And one day, the Krishna and the cowherd boys, they were herding the cows, and they went out some distance away from Vrindavan, taking care of the cows. And the heat was very, very intense that day. And the boys that day, they hadn't had any breakfast. And then Krishna, he saw that the trees were acting like umbrellas, and they were giving shade over himself and his friends. At that time, Krishna told the boys, Hey Stoka Krishna, hey Angso, Sri Daman, Subalarjuna, Vishala Rishabha Tejasvin Deva Prasthavarutapa. He spoke about 11 different boys. He addressed 11 different boys by name. O Stoka Krishna, and Angsu, O Sridama, Subal and Arjun, O Brishabha, O Jasri, Deva Prastha, and Varutapa. He began to speak to those boys in such a very, very sweet way, glorifying the particular type of love that each one of them had for him. And Krishna told the boys, he said that these trees, they make me very, very happy. And each one of you, one by one, you should glorify the trees. Trees are so very, very important. And when the boys heard that, they said, Krishna, you're the best, you're the ornament of all the poets. Therefore, you should praise the trees. And Krishna smiled, and he told the boys, Pasyaitaitan mahabhagan paramartaikanta jivitan vata varsata pahimam sahanto varayantina. Just see, he said, how fortunate these trees are, because they're completely dedicated to the benefit of other persons. And even the trees are just standing there. They're tolerating the wind, the rain, heat, and snow. But in spite of all their suffering that they're going through, still, they protect us from all these elements. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshani, he says that the reason why Krishna is setting up for the next pastime, because he's going to draw a contrast between the behavior of the non-moving, seemingly dull trees of Braj and the Yajna Brahmins. And he's going to point out how how these trees are superior to those so-called Brahmins, because they're giving everything that they have. And Jiva Goswami says that the 10 boys surrounding Krishna, they represent the 10 directions, which gathered around him out of prem. Just as the boys are gathered around him, all the 10 directions, they gather around Krishna out of love. The first 8 boys are the different 8 directions. And then there's Devaprastha and Varutapa. Devaprastha is holding an umbrella over Krishna's head, and Varutapa is sweeping the ground, the path in front of Krishna. So Devaprastha represents the sky, and Varutapa then represents the ground. And this way, 10 different directions. And then there's an 11th boy, who's Bhadrasena, and Bhadrasena, Jiva Goswami says, he's a good friend of Balaram, and he's the commander-in-chief of all the boys. So these trees are very, very fortunate. He says that some trees, they tolerate all these different difficult things, the cold, the wind, the rain, but they don't protect others. There's certain types of trees, they tolerate so much, but they don't give any shade. They don't give any fruit or anything. And then there's other trees which are very merciful and affectionate, and they give some fruits, they may give some shade. You may grow a banana tree here during the summertime, but that tree can't tolerate the cold of the wintertime. So Jiva Goswami says some trees, they can tolerate, but they don't give any shelter or anything. And then other trees, they can give shelter in that, but they can't tolerate the cold. And he says that these trees are very, very wonderful because they do both. And Krishna goes on, he says, Oho esham varam janma sarva pranam upajivanam. Sujanesheva yesham vai vimukya yanti nartina. He said these trees are maintaining every living entity. So their birth is very successful. Their behavior is just like that of great personalities. Because anyone who asks something from a tree never goes away disappointed. So when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speaks about the Gora Briksha, or the tree of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the 9th chapter of Adi Leela, in the 46th verse, he quotes this particular verse. And Prabhupada comments on it in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says that according to Vedic civilization, Kshatriyas are considered to be great personalities, because if anyone goes to a Kshatriya king to ask for charity, the king will never refuse. What's one many, many examples are there. That one example that comes to my mind is Karna. He'd received some protective shield from his father at the time of his birth, from Suryadev. And at one point, Krishna came to him and begged that, "Can you please give me this shield?" And Karna gave it, understanding that he's going to die. This is like his death. That's how benevolent a king is. So Prabhupada says, the trees are compared to these noble Kshatriyas because everyone derives all kinds of benefits from the trees. Some people take fruit, other people take flowers, some take leaves, some take twigs, others cut down the tree, and yet the tree gives to everyone without any hesitation. And Prabhupada says this verse quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam was quoted by Lord Krishna to his friends when he was taking rest underneath the tree after the pastime of stealing the clothes of the gopis, Vastraharana Leela. By quoting this verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us that we should be tolerant like trees and also beneficial like trees, which give everything to the needy persons who come underneath them. A needy person may derive many advantages from trees and also from many animals, but in modern civilization, people have become so ungrateful that they exploit the trees and animals and kill them. These are some of the sinful activities of modern society. So Prabhupada wanted that the devotees should become like trees. But a tree has to have water. It's described by Sanatana Goswami in Krishna Lila Stava. Rupa namashrita Avishta. He says a very wonderful thing. Rupa, we'll break down the words. Rupa means form. Nama means name. Rupa nama ashre avishta. Someone who takes shelter of the form of the Panchatattva, the form of the deities of Radha and Krishna, Rup. Someone who takes shelter of Nam, the holy name. Avishta. We're speaking of something about Avishta. Avishta means that Krishna enters into that personality and they become something different. And this is a very, very important subject matter in Chaitanya Charitamrita. In the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he says that Vande Guruni Sabhaktani Sami Savatarakan Tap Prakasham Stripchak Takti Krishna Chaitanya Samnakam. First verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says we're going to speak in this book about 6 topics. And he mentions the Panchatattva. Who is the 6th? Vande Gurun, Gurudev. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has written a very wonderful article on this, which I'll probably have to translate a little bit from Old English to more contemporary English. He says that the associates of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, this is from an article called The Associates of Sri Chaitanya. The associates of Sri Krishna Chaitanya are constituents of himself. He says that his associates are parts of himself. He said it is our object in this short paper to study the implications of these doctrines. And this is something we'd like to speak about. Srila Prabhupada wanted that. Our movement is based on the conception of empowerment. Srila Prabhupada took these devotees and did amazing things. I offer my pranams thousands and thousands of times over to all Srila Prabhupada's disciples who are going out every day for 8 or 10 hours a day on the streets and doing Harinam and doing book distribution, who are cooking and doing so many very, very difficult labors, things which I think many of us wouldn't be able to do today. Oftentimes we hear devotees say, well, it seems different today than what I've heard ISKCON was like when Srila Prabhupada was present. Ramana Sukha Prabhu. Is it different today? It's very different, isn't it? Yes. There was a great intensity in those days. That's something I've heard devotees say was a big difference. Would you agree with that? That's saying it very lightly. Saying it very, very lightly. We offer our pranams to those. But how were they able to do it? We can't do that thing. How were they able to do that? I've contemplated the subject matter, and I came to a conclusion, which is not exactly written down, but I think after I present this, hopefully you'll agree with me, that Srila Prabhupada, he acted in he followed 4 principles in this movement. Those 4 principles are love, trust, responsibility, and empowerment. And these 4 principles go in sequence. The first principle is love. Prabhupada spoke a lot about love and trust. It's not like in the New Age movement, we just say, I love you. But this movement is really about love. Not just about giving hugs, but it's about Krishna Bhakti. Because Krishna Bhakti is real love. And love means trust. If you really love someone, the symptom of your love is that you trust them. And what's the symptom of your trust? Hey, Dad, you say you trust me. Can I have the keys to the car? The symptom of trust is responsibility. From love is trust. And from trust comes responsibility. And Srila Prabhupada he loved those devotees and he trusted those devotees. And the proof of his trust was he gave them great responsibility. I've heard stories of devotees who joined the movement, and 2 or 3 days after they joined, literally, they came and they said, well, now you've been here for a few days, you should go and you should open up your own center. It's inconceivable today. The devotees got so much responsibility. You think about Mukunda Maharaj and Janaki and Shyamasundar Prabhu and Malati and these devotees that Prabhupada sent to England. It wasn't like they were big scholars. They didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness. They hadn't read the entire Bhagavatam yet. They'd only stopped committing sinful activities just a short time before that. But Prabhupada, he loved them and he trusted them. And he gave them great responsibility. And what was the result of his giving them responsibility? they became empowered. I remember once in Jagannath Puri, we have many parikramas every year. We used to before we started traveling so much. We still have a few. But one year there was a group of young girls who came from Mayapur, one of the schools. And there were the girls were about from the age of, 7 to about 12 or something. And we were taking them around, and we went to the temple of Tota Gopinath, and I spoke something there. And afterwards we were walking down the road, and all these little girls were around me. And one of them said, "Prabhuji, that was so good. And when we grew up, we want to be just like you." Like this, little girls, And I stopped, and I said, "No." And they were all a little shook that I would speak like that. And I said, "No. You shouldn't be like me. You should become better than me. Because I'm coming from a very sinful background. But you're coming from such a wonderful situation. Your parents are devotees and things. You should do more than me." And I remember, it's a place in my heart for that memory. When I said that to that little girl, her back became straight and a smile on her face. This is important in our movement. This is an important principle of Vaishnavism, to empower others. It's not like other religions or other civic or different types of organizations where we have old boys clubs, we call them in America, where the older people, they sit around and they talk about, I remember when I was young in this group, we did it like this, and these new people, they don't know anything, these young people. And we have an old boys club, and we want to keep the responsibilities and the power and the perks to ourselves. But this is not Vaishnavism. Vaishnavism means that we should want to see everyone empowered. And Srila Prabhupada did that. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was speaking about this principle in a very, very deep way. He says that Sri Krishna's active existence, his existence is active. Krishna's existence is always in flux. It's always moving. His active existence involves the undivided operation of the following 6 divine entities. So his active existence, he has an existence, you might say, which is passive. We see the deities of Panchatattva. That's a kind of passive existence. They're not moving around a lot. But they're there. That's Krishna. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But he also has what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta calls an active existence, which involves the undivided operation of 6 different entities, divine entities. Krishna is moving around in 6 different forms. He says, the gurus are devotees, avatars, divine descents, divine manifestations, divine powers, and Godhead himself. All of these are jointly and severally divine. They're jointly divine, and they're divine in separate ways. And this is a subject matter that we would like to speak about for the next few days. How Krishna is manifested as Gurudev, how he's manifested as the devotees, how the devotees become empowered. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta goes on to say in a very beautiful way, as Sri Krishna Chaitanya is identical with Sri Krishna, the active existence of Sri Chaitanya also implies the cooperation of the above 6 divine categories. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also has an active existence. He's moving about. Sometimes the devotees, they address the king of Puri as Jangama Narayan, or moving Narayan, because he's considered to be the manifestation of Lord Jagannath. At our temple in Gadaigiri in Orissa, when they constructed the new temple, they invited Gajapati Maharaj Dibya Singh Dev, the current king of Puri, and about 25,000 people came to that tiny village, which normally has about 200 inhabitants or maybe less. 25,000 people. They had a pandal in a big field. And we sent a car for the king of Puri. And when the king of Puri came, he was walking to the pandal. I saw a very interesting thing. All the villagers were going behind him and they were digging up the ground that he'd stepped on. And they were either smearing it on their body or they were putting it in bags. because they consider him to be like Jangama Narayan. They consider him to be like the moving form of Jagannath. He's Jagannath's representative. He's not Jagannath, but like Sakshat Dharitvain, as we consider Gurudev to be a manifestation of Krishna, in the same way the king of Puri is considered to be. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, the active existence of Sri Chaitanya implies the cooperation of the above 6 divine categories. When Sri Krishna Chaitanya was pleased to manifest his appearance on this mundane plane, all the 6 constituents of himself also necessarily made their appearance as part and parcel of himself. He says, the appearance of Godhead in this world, when Krishna appears in this world, it implies the co-appearance of all his divine paraphernalia. If Krishna appears, it means his paraphernalia is also appearing. Godhead must not be conceived as in any way separable from his entourage. Don't think of Krishna as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as being separate from his devotees. Godhead shorn or devoid of any of his paraphernalia is a delusion. In the same way, the appearance of divine paraphernalia involves the appearance of the divinity. When the paraphernalia of the Lord appears, when the devotees of the Lord appears, it also means the Lord appears. The Lord appears in that place. The two are distinct yet inseparable forms of the one supreme. Sri Chaitanya is the divine personality himself. His associates share his divine nature. Sri Krishna Chaitanya is an extended subject. Nice sentence, isn't it? Sri Krishna Chaitanya is an extended subject. All the 6 divine forms have to be worshipped if it is the intention to worship Sri Chaitanya. If we want to worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we have to worship him in all of his forms, including his forms as the devotees and Gurudev. So, this is described by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in a number of places. He says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adilila chapter 10, Bhakti kripa koren Prabhu 18 swarupe Sakshat Avesha Aravir Bhava Rupe Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna. He says that there's 3 ways that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives his mercy. Sakshat, he appears himself directly. The second is his prowess within someone he empowers, Avesha. And the third is his manifestation, or Avirbhav. Prabhupada writes in his purport, the Sakshat feature of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is his personal presence. Avesha refers to invested power, like that invested in Nakul Brahmachari. Avirbhav is a manifestation of the Lord that appears even though he's not personally present. For example, Sri Sachimata offered food at home to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although he was far away in Jagannath Puri. And when she opened her eyes after offering the food, she saw that it had actually been eaten by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jiva Goswami, in his wonderful book, Gopal Champu, he describes the letters sent back and forth between Krishna from Mathura to the residents of Vrindavan. And he sent those letters with the cowherd boys when they were returning after Krishna killed Kamsa and Chanura and Mushtaka and all the wrestlers in Kuvaligapida. Nanda Maharaj and the boys stayed for some time. It's a long story. And finally they returned very sadly to Vrindavan without Krishna. And Krishna sent a letter. He sent letters to other boys who were still in Vrindavan. He sent letters to the gopis. And he also sent a letter to his mother. And in the letter that he wrote to his mother, Krishna said that don't think that you're hallucinating. When you're cooking every day and those foodstuffs disappear, I'm personally going and I'm eating those things. Don't think that you're just hallucinating. So this is a feature of the Lord known as Avirbhav. He appears in a place even though the devotees may not see him, like Sachimata or Mother Yashoda. Prabhupada says, similarly, when Srivas Thakur performed Sankirtan, everyone felt the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even in his absence. This is another example of Avirbhav. And there's many, many examples of this. If we have time, maybe on the third day, we'll speak some stories from a wonderful book called Bhakti Ratnakar, and hear about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared a number of different times in different kirtans. The devotees all saw him. This is Avirbhav. And this Avirbhav takes place when devotees become very, very much absorbed in the Lord. They become Avishta. Krishna, he says in the Bhagavad Gita, we should meditate on him. Mamanabhava mad bhakto, madhyaji mam namaskaru. 1865 in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you should always think of me. You become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. We all say this. Every religion says this. But what's the difference in this Krishna consciousness movement? When the devotees in this movement begin to meditate on the Lord, something happens to them. And there are many, many different examples of this. In the 15th chapter of Madhya Lila Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear the story of Mukunda Das. And Mukunda Das, he was a doctor, and he was serving the Muslim king. And as he was serving the king one day, some of the king's servants were fanning him with a peacock fan. And when Mukunda saw that, something happened. Siki picha deki Mukunda prema vishta hoila ati ucha tungi hoite buni te padila bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna. Siki picha deki, when he saw that peacock fan, then prema vishta hoila, he became absorbed. Avishta and prem. That prem completely absorbed Mukunda's body. And Mukunda fell down on the ground. That word Avishta is also used in the 9th chapter of Madhya Lila. Keha hase keha ninde taha nahi mane Avishta hana gita pande ananda mane bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speaks about the story of the Gita Panda, who was reading Bhagavad Gita, but he couldn't really read. And sometimes he had the book upside down. Sometimes he had it right side up. He couldn't read properly, and people were laughing at him. But he didn't even notice that anyone was laughing at him, because he was crying in ecstasy. All that he could think about was the picture on the cover, and how Krishna had become the chariot driver of Arjuna, the Sarati. I heard some time back what it means to be a driver for those old-fashioned chariots like Arjuna was riding on. It means that the warrior was on the top part of the chariot, and he was sitting down, and he had his feet down below, and the driver was below his feet, and the warrior would keep his feet on the shoulders of the driver. And he would press, now go right. Pressing with the right foot meant go right, pressing with the left foot meant go left. Maybe both at once means stop. He would give different signals because the battlefield was so loud. This is what it meant. Krishna was having Arjuna's feet on his shoulders. He was accepting such a humble position. And so when this Gita Panda was thinking about that, how Krishna was driving the chariot for Arjuna, he just began crying and crying. And he was impervious. He didn't even realize people were laughing at him. A similar story is there in, I think it's chapter 82 of the 10th canto, and in Gopal Champu by Jiva Goswami. In Gopal Champu, he says that when the residents of Vrindavan came to Kurukshetra, that Krishna went to visit them, and Krishna went with Devaki and Vasudeva and some of the other persons, and Krishna was so ecstatic to see his Bappa, his father, Krishna began crying and he went running forward. And Nanda Maharaj was stunned. And Krishna, he gave Krishna a big hug. And then Krishna said, Bappa, where's Mata? Where's Mother? That was the most important person Krishna wanted to see. And Nanda Maharaj couldn't even speak. He just pointed in the direction. There was a wagon with some cover over it. And Krishna went there along with Devaki and some of the other residents of Mathura and Dwarka. And when Krishna went there, he fell at the feet of Mother Yashoda. He began crying. And at that time, Devaki began speaking to Yashoda in a way that ladies, please excuse me, ladies can be very expert at. It seemed like she was speaking very sweet words of glorification to Mother Yashoda. But actually, her words had an edge to them. And what was she saying? She told Mother Yashoda, Yashoda, I just want to thank you for taking such good care of our son, even though he wasn't your son. You took such good care of him. It seemed like she was speaking in a very loving way. But Jiva Goswami says her actual purpose was to say something very cutting. But Jiva Goswami says that Devaki was defeated by Yashoda. Yashoda didn't even hear what Devaki said because she was Avesha. She was simply looking at the face of Krishna and she was crying and crying. And she couldn't even hear what Devaki had to say to her. Similarly, my Guru Maharaj, he sometimes told a story about how in Braj, sometimes the elderly ladies, they would try to keep the younger gopis away from Krishna. That's their duty. And it's actually their devotional service because it adds some excitement to the mellow, to the relationship that Krishna has with the gopis. It's not that their parents come and say, here, you should go out on a date with Krishna. You should just go with him. But no, they want to stop them. And so there was one elderly gopi whose son just married a young girl. And this young gopi, she'd heard so much about Krishna, but she'd never seen Krishna. And she had such a strong desire to see Krishna. And then one day she heard all the residents of Vrindavan, they were calling out, hey, come see Krishna and the boys. They're taking the calves out to Bandiravan to herd the calves in the forest. And so all the gopis began running to the porches of their homes to see Krishna. And this young gopi, she also started going out. And the elderly, her mother-in-law, she was staying with her husband. Her mother-in-law said, you can't go out. If you go outside, there's a black snake there. And that black snake, he may bite you. And then you may die. You'll lose your chastity. Krishna was very, very famous in Braj. And the ladies, the elderly gopis, were very concerned about their young girls. They wanted to keep them away. Makara, also, there's one in Rupa Goswami says in Lalita Madhav that Makara, Radharani's grandmother, sometimes she would call Krishna a black snake. So, you black snake, you keep away from my granddaughter. So this elderly gopi, she told her daughter-in-law, you can't go outside. There's a black snake that may bite you. And that gopi was feeling so sad because everyone else was allowed to go out and see Krishna, but I can't go out and see him. What a terrible situation I have. But then she noticed there's a crack in the door. And so she put her eye just up to the crack and she was looking out. And Krishna was there herding the calves. And suddenly Krishna understood the mind and heart of this particular gopi. And so Krishna suddenly, he grabbed the tail of one of the calves and he twisted it. And the calf, just like a guided arrow, ran right to the porch of that particular gopi. And then Krishna went there to get his calf. And he went there, and that gopi, she was looking through the crack in the doorway, and Krishna smiled at her. And then Krishna left with the calves and the boys. And a few minutes later, that gopi's mother-in-law, she opened the door, and she looked at that gopi. And the gopi had the experience, one of the different asakalila, different types of asasaptikara bhavs she had, that she was stunned, stamba. And she said, hey, Huh? What? And everybody began talking, oh my God, that black snake bit her. So now we have to do something to make her regain her external consciousness. So they told her, you grind some, you churn some yogurt. But instead of churning yogurt, instead of putting butter instead of putting yogurt in the pot, she put some mustard seeds. And she started churning the mustard seeds, and it was making a terrible sound. And then other times she'd just stop because she'd completely forgotten herself. Because she was Avishta. She was completely absorbed in Krishna. She'd forgotten all about herself. And so then the mother-in-law, she said, hey, what are you doing? Stop that. So then she gave her 3 water pots. You put these on your head. Go get some water. And here you can carry the baby also. And she put the baby under her arm. And so that gopi, walking like a robot, completely absorbed in Krishna, completely unaware of external things, she went out to the well. And she put the pots down. And she took the baby and she took a rope from the well and she tied the rope around the baby. And she started to lower the baby into the well. And some of the people saw, hey, what are you doing? Stop that. So this is Avishta. The devotees become completely oblivious to everything. And Krishna actually enters into the devotee. And therefore, as we're saying, Sanatana Goswami says that Rupa Namashrita Avishta. Avishta. Krishna enters into those devotees through these 2 forms, through Rup and through Nam. And this is a very, very important principle. I'll finish with one last short story from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Jaiva Dharma. He speaks about one sannyasi. He was called Paramahansa Thakur, and he was a sannyasi, a Mayavadi sannyasi, on the topmost level of sannyas. And he'd studied Sanskrit like anything, and he knew all the Vedas and Vedanta. And he was a Mayavadi. And he was in Benares one day, and he was reading his Vedanta Sutra and that. And one day as he was walking through the city, he saw a sadhu. And this particular sadhu was different. He'd seen many sadhus before. But the sadhus that he'd seen before, usually they had tripundra, 3 lines going across their head, or maybe some of the Shaktas had just one big bindi on their forehead. But this sadhu, he had urdhvapundra, he had 2 lines going up on his forehead. And most of the sadhus that he was used to seeing were reciting Veda Vedanta, or they were sitting motionlessly and doing meditation. But this particular sadhu was acting in a very strange way. He was crying and calling out, Ha Gauranga, Ha Nityananda, and rolling on the ground. And the sannyasi said, what is this? What kind of sadhu is this? Crying like this and rolling on the ground in public? This is a very strange thing. And then he lost sight of that sadhu, but he couldn't get him out of his mind. And for several days he was always thinking about him, and he tried to find that sadhu, but he couldn't find him. And finally he asked some other people there in Benares, I saw this sadhu, he had this kind of tilak, and he was calling out, Ha Gauranga, Ha Nityananda. Once we were in Puri, we were doing Harinam with Sachinandan Maharaj. It's about 4 of us. We're taking him different places in Puri, and then we went past the Govardhan Mutt. The Govardhan Mutt was established by Shankaracharya. And 2 sadhus were standing out there with tripundra on and rudraksha beads around their necks, and they were staring at our Harinam. It was a very ecstatic Harinam party. And as we came by, Sachinanda Maharaj, he put his arms out like this, and all of a sudden those 2 sadhus, like they were mesmerized, they just started following us. And they tried to chant in the kirtan. I mean, it was really like something out of a movie or something. Hare Krishna. They could hardly say the names of Krishna. But they stayed with us for a few hours. They went a few different places, and finally, at the end of the time, they were smiling, they were so very happy, and they went away. So this sannyasi in Benares, he had such an experience seeing this Vaishnav, and he asked some other people, well, who was that person? I saw he was chanting Ha Gauranga, and he had this kind of tilak on. And they said, oh, those are the Hare Krishna people. They live in Navadvip. And that sannyasi then went from Benares to Navadvip, and he became a Vaishnav. And no one preached to him. No one even gave him a book. But because he met a Vaishnav who was Avishta, who was completely absorbed in Krishna and Krishna's name, Krishna was manifest in that person. Rupa Namashrita Avishta, Sanatana Goswami says. Krishna is manifested in that devotee. And this is our movement. When we speak about the tree of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, when we speak about trees, we may speak about the tree of our life, our material life, and how it's just on fire because we're not pouring any water of hearing and chanting on that tree. But when we take shelter of Gurudev, and Gurudev Sangsara Davana Liloka, Chanaya Karuna Gana Ganat, from like a great cloud of mercy, he comes and begins to pour that water on us in the form of hearing and chanting. Then we have another kind of tree, and we become actually part of the tree of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that manifesting that tree means that we have the qualities like we're reading about from this 22nd chapter of the 10th canto. The trees, they're giving everything to everyone else. They become very, very empowered. And this is our movement. All the devotees should become empowered, and we should act in such a way to empower others. If we contemplate on the matter, we have 3 different types of relationships: with superiors, with friends, equals, and with inferiors or juniors. And if we contemplate on the matter, we should empower each individual in all 3 of those type of relationships. We should empower persons who are junior to us by giving them responsibility, by giving them encouragement, by giving them love and trust. Similarly, with our friends, with our peers, we also trust them and we empower them. We listen to them because it's the nature of a friend. We listen to their ideas, their understanding in the Vaishnava Sangha, and we encourage them. And in that way they become empowered. And although it sounds paradoxical, we also can empower superiors. We can even empower Gurudev. Any senior devotee, any person who's speaking will tell you that they become empowered by the devotees who listen. When we listen to Gurudev, when we listen to the senior devotees, when we give respect to them, when we follow what they have to say, sometimes maybe we don't agree with them, but we don't argue with them. But we give respect to them. That gives them empowerment. Every parent understands that, isn't it? Every person who has a child, you become empowered. When your children give respect to you, when they listen to you, then those children become like an extension of yourself. And you become empowered in that way. So our movement is all about empowerment. And it begins with this Avishta, which means becoming very, very absorbed in Krishna Nam, and it goes all the way to the point where devotees become Avesha. And Prabhupada spoke many times about this, how empowered his disciples were. And sometimes he said things like, you're the incarnation of book distribution, or you were an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a previous life. I don't know, I'm not going to try to analyze those statements of Srila Prabhupada. If Prabhupada was speaking in a literal way, perhaps he was, or perhaps Srila Prabhupada was speaking in an encouraging way or a symbolic way. It's really, to me, it's not relevant, it's not so important, because what's important is the fact that those devotees became empowered. And Prabhupada wanted them to be empowered. Prabhupada loved them, he trusted them, he gave them responsibility, and they became empowered. And for this movement to continue, this is required. Otherwise, we've seen many spiritual movements which were established by great personalities like Jesus Christ, like Buddha, like many different prophets and others. But after the disappearance of that great personality, the followers, they imitate them. They think about the rules that person gave. They think about the particular details, but they neglect the principles behind it. It's a very difficult thing in our movement. As we're becoming more mature now, we speak about social issues. And should we call ladies Prabhu? Should we just call them Mataji? And I don't know, maybe we should have a big fight about it. Really important things like this. But these issues, these are particular details, and they're going to differ in different places. To me, far, far more important than the details are the principles behind that. And we see that Srila Prabhupada, just to comment on this particular controversial point, Prabhupada, he addressed some lady disciples as Prabhu. He wrote letters, and he said, "Dear Jamuna Prabhu, dear Malati Prabhu." At the same time, with respect to the other side of this discussion, I've never heard of Srila Prabhupada ever calling any Indian lady who spoke some Indian language, addressing her as Prabhu. it would be strange. Just like in English, it would be strange to call a lady Mr. or Sir. But this is semantics. These are just, it's not so important what syllables you use, what letters that you use to address someone. What's important is the understanding behind it. And Mataji is the word Mata in Sanskrit means one who is honored. The word is also a Hebrew word. In Hebrew, Mata means a field of grains. And it's also an Old English word, in Scottish English. The word Mata means one who is worshipable. In every language, practically, the word Mata means someone who's given great respect. But in our language, in our ISKCON language in the West, maybe it doesn't exactly have the same meaning. I don't think that particular detail is so important. What's important is to have an understanding of why we should give respect to everyone, why we should respect and why we should empower all devotees. This is the essence of Prabhupada's mission, as I see it. So we'll stop there. I think I've gone a little bit over time, but maybe if we have any quick comments from any devotees, anything you liked or questions. Ramana Sukha Prabhu. Is there a microphone that's given?
Hare Krishna. So this whole concept of empowerment, isn't it like different levels of empowerment? Like you could say that all devotees are empowered to chant Hare Krishna, to practice Krishna consciousness, and there's different levels. As one moves up, it can go all the way up to, as we refer to Srila Prabhupada as Shakti Avesha. Avesha. So is that one way of looking at it? There's different levels up to the top level
Certainly.
of Shakti Avesha.
If you talk about electricity, how many volts are you talking about? You're talking about 2 volts of electricity, you're talking about 100 volts of electricity, you're talking about 10,000 volts of electricity. And the amount is very, very different, and the things that can be done with those different degrees of electricity are very, very different. And Srila Prabhupada did something which is practically inconceivable, and therefore his godbrother, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, he famously said that Prabhupada was a Shakti Avesha avatar. This is an interesting point to me because in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Rupa Goswami, when he speaks about Avesha, in Shakti Avesha, he speaks about different types. And he says that Narad Muni, for example, he's Shakti Avesha of Bhakti Shakti. And the 4 Kumars are Shakti Avesha of Jnana Shakti. So when you speak about Avesha, it's not just the amount, the degree, as you're pointing out, but it's also the type, the quality. Right? Is it vanilla or is it chocolate? We don't take chocolate. Is it strawberry? Mm-hmm. Which one is it? And so we see Narad Muni as an incarnation of the Bhakti principle. What is Srila Prabhupada? What can we say? But I think it's obvious if we contemplate on Srila Prabhupada and what he did, because Phalina Parichate, you can judge a tree, what kind of tree it is, by the fruit that it gives. We can see that Srila Prabhupada was empowered to preach in the West. He did something that no one else could even conceive about doing. And so, to me, this implies something that if we want to preach in the West, we should try to understand, we should pray to Srila Prabhupada for intelligence, because social external things are always changing. Right? We should pray for intelligence, and we should also look at his example, how he preached in the West. Not that we may follow his exact things that he did in 1967. They may not be appropriate in our farm community here today in 2017. But how is it that requires some intelligence? That requires some empowerment from Gurudev. Okay? Anything else, is there, Mataji?
But I think it's very important what you are speaking about, because sometimes we look around and we have a devotee and you ask, oh, you speak nicely, why don't you give class sometimes? And I say, oh, I'm a new devotee, I'm just here 15 years. And that it's good to bring back that we give somebody the opportunity to do a service and then they can actually do it. And we shouldn't be so afraid of letting new devotees take responsibility. And I think
wonderful point.
Very important. Thank you.
It's a very, very important principle in any society, is a principle of respect. Respect is kind of the carrot that makes the donkey of the society move. Right? And in Western society, we see respect is given if you have powerful sex and if you have money. You may be born in Harlem, New York, which is a very low-class place, and a black body, which is generally not real high class there. But if you become a member of the Harlem Globetrotters, and you get fabulous money and you have all kinds of girlfriends, then everybody respects you and they don't care about your education or your particular qualities. Whereas in Vedic culture, we respect, in Varnashram Dharma, the Sudras they respect according to age, the Vaishyas they respect according to how much money someone has, the Kshatriyas according to their power, and the Brahmins according to their education, how much knowledge they have. But what about the Vaishnavas? We just printed in our last issue, Krishna Katamrita Bindu, our email magazine, a wonderful story from Hari Bhakti Sudadoya, which tells us how there was once an assembly of rishis headed by Markandeya Rishi. He was 7 kalpas old. I can't remember the figure, but that's like a few million years. That's really old, right? And all of a sudden, Parasara came. Parasara at that time Parasara was the father of Vyasadeva, but when he entered in that assembly, at that time, Parasara was 7 years old. He was a little boy. And in that assembly, the Sapta Rishis were there, and Markandeya Rishi, 7 kalpas old. And as soon as Parasara entered into that assembly, immediately Markandeya Rishi got off the seat and offered obeisances to that little boy. Imagine something like that happening in an assembly with many senior devotees. It's a disturbance to the assembly in a way, because it seems like maybe you're making offense to the senior devotees. You're giving more respect to this little boy than to the seniors. And Parasara was disturbed. He said, "Who am I and who are you? You're 7 kalpas old. I'm only 7 years old. What is this?" And then Markandeya Rishi explained to everyone there. He said, "Who is senior? A redwood tree?" When you're speaking about what redwood tree may live for a few thousand years old, or a 3-day-old tulsi plant. Who is more senior? And he said, we judge seniority not by age, but our seniority in a Vaishnava Sangha is judged by how much time you've spent thinking about Krishna. And he addressed all the senior people there, Markandeya Rishi, and he told them, although this little Parasara is only 7 years old, in his 7 years, he's thought about Krishna more than all of us put together and all of our millions and millions of years that we've been living. So he's senior to all of us. Well, this is a Vaishnava principle. That's not such an easy thing. It's not something we can sentimentally implement in a society, but at least we should have a theoretical understanding about that. And from that theoretical understanding, something may come. I should stop. Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj's discussions come. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveda Bhaktavinda ki, Go Premanande, Vanchakopadarubhischa, Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavevam.